This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. We've all stayed alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and this is episode 133 of the Conscious Resistance Live. I want to say I hope you're having a good week, and welcome back to those of you who maybe are watching right now on YouTube. I'm going to explain all that and more in just a moment. I just want to remind you guys, I do this every week, the Conscious Resistance Live, usually on Mondays, this week on a Wednesday. It's been a busy week, bringing you investigative journalism from a nuanced perspective, not just mainstream clickbait or mainstream alternative media clickbait, and getting into the deeper issues that matter, not just things that are going to be talked about in the corporate mainstream media, and not just things that the shallow independent media focuses on, but going deeper and, of course, always focusing on solutions. I've been running the Conscious Resistance since 2013 now. It's going on 11 years, and it's been 14 going on 15 years that I've been doing my activism in journalism. And tonight I'm excited and interested to see what happens, because we are actually live on YouTube right now. And when I say YouTube, I mean my old YouTube, the one that I got deleted off in October 2020, the one with 60,000 plus subscribers and 5 million plus views that was just taken away by YouTube for talking about certain topics back then. And I'm not even quite sure how I'm going to continue to use that channel. I'm actually live on both my YouTube channels, the old one that got deleted and the new one I made about a year or two ago to try to put some of my content up. And as you guys know, for those who followed along, first of all, thank you. Those who are watching on BitChute and Odyssey and Rockfin, and even on Twitter, we're also live on Facebook, or those who followed me on Telegram. I've never stopped producing content, but if you only follow me on YouTube, you might have thought I died or gave up or moved on with my life. But no, in fact, I've been quite busy the last 4 years, and we're going to get into some of that tonight as I share with you a bit about what I've been up to and why I think it matters, and maybe some ideas on stories that you want me to focus on. I want to connect with you guys, especially those of you who are watching on YouTube who might, as I said, have forgotten about me or just thought that I stopped doing my work. I never stopped doing my work. I will never stop doing this work. I have continued to, but of course I was deleted off YouTube in October 2020, like many, many people, for talking about certain things. And, when I got this channel back just a couple of days ago and then was just finally able to log in tonight, I realized how much has changed in my life in the last 4 years. So if you guys don't mind and you'll humor me, we're going to do a little bit. I'd like to catch you guys up a little bit, especially those of you who are just watching on YouTube, a little bit about what I've been up to and the work that I've been involved in, because as I said, I have never stopped. In fact, I honestly think the last 4 years of my work have probably been some of the biggest things I've been up to. And so let's go ahead. I actually made some notes. I'm going to share this with you. So October 2020 to where we are now. Let me just think about that for a second. I started writing for The Last American Vagabond in May 2020. Some of you may remember that. Ryan Christie and The Last American Vagabond, also deleted off YouTube. I'm still running the Conscious Resistance Network, obviously, but pretty much right around the time, maybe even right after I got kicked off YouTube, I launched something called the Greater Reset Activation. Some of you may have heard of it, may even know about it, maybe have even watched it. But I launched the Greater Reset along with John Bush and the Freedom Cell Network. We started our first event in January 2021. Huge success. Hundreds of thousands of people watched live all around the world while they were locked down. We had about 100 people show up in person in Morelia, or in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. And that began the Greater Reset movement, if you will. Go to thegreaterreset.org to find out more. We've held now 5 different successful activations over the last 4 years. And we did them in January at the same time that the World Economic Forum was meeting to talk about their Great Reset. We gathered for 5 days talking about mental, physical, spiritual health, permaculture, growing food, buying land, decentralized, distributed, privacy-based technology. We talked about building parallel systems and community building ideas and tools and tips. So much. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'm going to continue to do that. We host our next event in January in Mexico, Morelia, Mexico. I encourage you to come to that if you can. But we've also now expanded, and this September I'm going to be traveling to Bath, UK, where we're going to be hosting the first People's Reset UK, and I'm extremely excited about that. This one's only going to be 3 days long, but the same idea. Solutions focus. That's all that matters, you guys. I know so much has happened in the last 4 years, those on YouTube, since we've kept up. Those of you who followed me elsewhere, we've been on that journey together. You've seen my reporting. You've seen my thoughts on different things. Those of you who haven't, there's a lot to catch up on. And unfortunately, I really can't say much of it on YouTube. And I don't, but as I said, I don't know how I'm going to treat this YouTube channel. I don't want it to get deleted, because I'm glad at the very least all my documentaries and some of my work are now back on there. They've always been on my website, on my own servers, but it's great to see them back on YouTube. And I would like them to stay there. Also, in 2021, I launched what we called the Activation Tour. Remember 2021, spring 2021, COVID, 1984, nightmare, people locked down, etc. Myself and my partner Miriam, we traveled across the United States in I think the fall of 2021, and we did 50 cities over 60 days, traveling around the United States, hosting community events, bringing people out to volunteer in their communities, giving a presentation about opting out of the technocratic state and warning about what was coming, the passports and all that stuff. And Miriam as well guided a meditation. And that was an amazing experience I had at the time of my life. Then in the fall of spring of 2022, we did the Mexico Activation Tour. We traveled across Mexico for 60 days, doing events all over there, because some of you may know, or maybe not, that Mexico ended up being a huge spot for expats over COVID. And you may remember that I went to Mexico back in March 2020, and I'm still here. I'm still living here. I come back and forth, but this is where my home is. The other big thing is I got land since the last time you guys have followed me on YouTube. I bought land last year. Go to theconsciousagora.com. You can learn more about that. You can go to theconsciousresistance.com, visit our website, and you can see videos about that. We grew the Freedom Cell Network, which some of you may remember, which I've been talking about since 2016, now to 40,000 plus people around the world. As I said, the Freedom Cell Network was involved in the Greater Reset. We've just been, honestly, we've been kicking ass and waking people up and trying to spread solutions. I also, you may remember, released my 5G documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, in early 2020. That was, shortly before this channel on YouTube got deleted. That video has been seen hundreds of thousands of times. And since that time, I launched my 17-part documentary series, The Pyramid of Power. We've released 14 episodes now. We're working on the 15th, and the next 2 will be out later this year. You can check it out at thepyramidofpower.net. That is probably the biggest project I've ever undertaken, and I started that in 2021. Those videos are on my website. They're at thepyramidofpower.net. Some of them are on the other Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. None of them are on this old school Conscious Resistance channel. Again, I might add them there, but who knows? I really don't want to get deleted. I ended my live show, the Conscious Resistance Live, the show you're watching right now. I ended it in 2021 because I got tired of just talking about the news, and I started another podcast called The Activation that is just inspirational, motivational talks. You can find those episodes on theconsciousresistance.com. But obviously, I brought the show back about a month ago because I decided it's election season again, and there's so much to talk about. There's so much to warn people about. There is a lot of garbage going on, my friends. And if we are going to make it through this, I think that we need more sane and rational voices. And I'm disappointed to say that there's not necessarily a whole lot of sane, rational voices in the independent media. As far as I see it, there are still good people doing work. James Corbett, Ryan Christine, The Last American Vagabond, and so many others that I'll forget the names. But there's also a lot of people doing a lot of horrible work. Misinformation and disinformation is real, but it's not just so-called conspiracy theorists. It's coming from the government purposely planting fake information, fake news. I think these are things we really need to be concerned about. And that's why today's talk is called Supreme Court Ruling. Is this a pointless freakout, or is this the end of liberty? Because you're seeing, depending on which news channels you're watching and which perspective you buy into, like from the right wing, you're seeing like, this is a great idea, a great solution for Trump. Trump now he's been proven correct, and presidential immunity is preserved. And others who are saying like, oh my God, this is the end of our constitutional republic, a democracy, whatever you want to call it. We're all going to be in FEMA camp soon, thanks to Trump. And as we always try to do on this show, I want to find where's the truth. Sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes it is on one side. Sometimes it's on the other. But obviously, there's so many different perspectives. And another big thing that you're going to hear me harp on tonight, and so I hope you guys are ready for this, is that there's a lot of independent media giving Trump passes. There's so many people I've watched and seen over the last couple of years. I'm not Trump derangement syndrome like some of you out there might think, but I also don't fall for Trump savior syndrome and think this guy's perfect. He is a danger, I believe, to liberty. That doesn't mean Joe Biden and Obama and the other people aren't. I know some people are stuck in a dichotomy and they can't think deeper than, oh, he said this guy's bad. Does that mean the other guy's good? No, my friends, it's a little bit more complex and nuanced than that. It's not black and white. It's not simple. But I do know this. The answers to our problems are not going to be found in the political system. I've known that for years, and I've been telling you guys about that. That's another big thing, my friends on YouTube who have missed the last 4 years. I released my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, in 2020. Actually, right before COVID, January 2020. This book has now been translated to Korean, to German, to Spanish, and it is sold all over the world now. You can download it at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. And this book introduces the concept of exit and build, which is really what my message is about. Agorism, exiting and building parallel systems, counter economic systems, counter systems to the mainstream, because the answers are not going to come through politics at all. That's what we're going to get into. I've also got another story. We're going to talk about this new investigation showing widespread sexual abuse from police officers all across the United States. It's a pretty shocking, disturbing story, but it's one we got to talk about. And that's what we're going to focus on. And just to recap again, The Conscious Resistance, this is my live weekly show. I cover a couple of news stories and we dive deep. But also, we're going to play a music video at the end of this show. I like to highlight conscious musicians. And I started a new segment called What's Derrick Reading? And you see my books back here. You can't see them all, but there's some there. I pick a book every week and we talk about it. And this week, I'm going to be not reading from, but telling you guys about this book called, let's see if we can get that in focus, Proofs of a Conspiracy. This book came out in 1775. Sometime in the late 1700s, this book was published and sent to George Washington. It's got a really interesting history, so we're going to talk about that later. But as I mentioned, our most important story of the day is talking about Donald Trump and this Supreme Court ruling. So let's go ahead and dive right into this, everyone. Again, thank you all who are continuing to support me. If you're new here, I do this every week. I've been doing this for 14 years. If you want to support me, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. You can support me at buymeacoffee.com/Derrick Broze. You can also go to derrickbroze.substack.com, and those are the ways that you can support me if you like. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look here at what we got. I'm going to go through 7 different articles with different headlines about Trump's ruling. And we're going to look at each of these perspectives. We're going to give them, we're going to give them their day in court. I'm going to share you what these different views are claiming, and I'm going to tell you what I think is actually going on. And again, if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. It's fine for you to be wrong. But seriously, it's okay for us to disagree. I hope you won't turn off the channel, go to another place just because I'm telling you that, hey, maybe Trump is not the hero that you think he is. In fact, if those of you who've been following my journalism, my work, and especially my article that I wrote at the end of Trump's presidency called Here Are 18 Ways Trump Has Served the Swamp, you know that I've got the receipts to back this up. I'm not just some anti-Trump, whatever you want to say, progressive. So here's one. Let's start with Fox News. The Trump immunity case. Supreme Court rules ex-presidents have substantial protection from prosecution. Now, I want to start off by saying this. Obviously, this is a Fox News article, and people would expect it to be a right-wing slant, and there is a little bit of that. But this is actually the most unbiased out of the articles, besides the last one that we're going to go over. So we got a Fox News article, we got a CNN, Atlantic, we got 2 CNN, 2 Fox, Atlantic, 3 CNN, 2 Fox, 1 Atlantic, and then 1 from the Rutherford Institute. So again, I'm trying to give you a nice perspective from across the various political views. The issue before the Supreme Court stemmed from special counsel Jack Smith's election interference case against former President Trump. The Supreme Court ruled in Monday that in Trump versus United States, that a former president has substantial immunity from prosecution for official acts while in office, but not for unofficial acts. And this is, of course, the big crux of the thing. What is unofficial and what is official? Well, that's yet to be determined. It's going to go back to the lower courts, and the lower courts will have to decide that and make it clear to everybody what counts as official presidential acts and what doesn't. The Supreme Court ruled Monday as we said, that official acts, but not unofficial. In a 6-3 decision, the court sent the matter back down to a lower court, as the justices did not apply the ruling to whether or not Trump is immune to prosecution from efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Chief Justice John Roberts for the majority writes, quote, "The president enjoys no immunity for his unofficial acts, and not everything the president does is official." So they kind of just like, all right, here's the game we'll play. He can't be charged for official things, but he can be charged for unofficial. And not everything he does is official. We'll let the courts figure it out. And so some would see this as the Supreme Court kind of punting it down the court. They basically just passed it down and chose not to actually rule on the deeper substance of the matter. Nevertheless, this is where we're at. He said, Chief Justice John Roberts said, quote, "The president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct in carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch under the Constitution. And the system of separated powers designed by the framers has always demanded an energetic, independent executive." Interestingly, some people thought that writing that it's demanded an energetic, independent executive, meaning president, that the phrase energetic, the word there is a kind of a dig at Biden being slow energy. I don't know. He continued, "The president, therefore, may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers, and he is entitled at a minimum to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. This immunity applies equally to all occupants of the Oval Office, regardless of politics, policy, or party." Okay, so that's the ruling from the majority, the 6-3 majority, which, let's be real, is made up of the conservative Supreme Court justices, some of which were appointed by Trump. So some would say, hey, like, for example, the left-wing media is calling it the Trump Supreme Court, basically saying Trump stacked the deck. And so, of course, these people are looking out for him. Now, let's see what and I'm really holding my tongue here because there's a lot I want to say, but I just want to give you guys the facts as being reported by these outlets, because I don't know how much reading you've done, but there's a lot of perspectives out there, and I guarantee you probably aren't hearing them all, because the internet that we are now existing in has created silos based on your algorithm. If you follow one type of media, you're more than likely just to get that opinion reinforced constantly. I'm trying to crack through some of that. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, joined by Justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, dissented, saying the decision, quote, "makes a mockery of the principle foundational to our Constitution and system of government that says no man is above the law." They continued, "Relying on little more than its own misguided wisdom about the need for bold and unhesitating action by the president, the court gives former President Trump all the immunity he has asked for and more. Because our Constitution does not shield a president from answering for criminal and treasonous acts, I dissent." And it also notes that Justice Clarence Thomas penned a separate statement saying, quote, "To highlight another way in which this prosecution may violate our constitutional structure, the appointment of Jack Smith as special counsel." So he's basically saying, like, this appointment of this special counsel to prosecute Trump, that might actually be a violation of the Constitution. I think this is interesting. It's clear, though, again, the justices are taking up Trump's side. I don't think anybody can deny that. And so I've personally never really been a fan of the Supreme Court. I think it's just kind of a ridiculous idea to imagine these 9 people wearing black robes are somehow going to, guide us to the promised land, and they've got more wisdom than any of us, the average people, right? I think it's kind of a silly idea. They're fallible, they can be corrupted, and more people are finally learning that, and they're seeing that, hey, look, these people clearly have a Trump favoritism going on, and the other guys may have a Trump bias in the opposite direction. The point is, the Supreme Court is not this neutral thing that we can just rely on. So it's not surprising to see Justice Clarence Thomas making these statements and kind of in defense of Trump, but also acknowledging that this appointment of a special counsel probably is bullshit. So let's go back and let's see what the rest of this statement says. It says, "In this case, the Attorney General purported to appoint a private citizen as special counsel to prosecute a former president on behalf of the United States. But I am not sure that any office for the special counsel has been, quote, established by law as the Constitution requires. By requiring that Congress created federal offices by law, the Constitution imposes an important check against the president. He cannot create offices at his pleasure. If there is no law establishing the office that the special counsel occupies, meaning Jack Smith, then he cannot proceed with this prosecution. A private citizen cannot criminally prosecute anyone, let alone a former president." He concludes, "There are serious questions whether the Attorney General has violated that structure by creating an office of the special counsel that has not been established by law. Those questions must be answered before this prosecution can proceed. We must also respect the Constitution's separation of powers in all its forms." So that's kind of like a side issue here going on, but I do think it's interesting that, again, they're taking sides for Trump. So let's continue on, show you a couple more headlines. This is from CNN, and it says why Donald Trump shouldn't be celebrating the immunity ruling just yet. And it's interesting, but it gets a little bit into the weeds about how they could still form a case against Trump if the judge that the case is being kicked down to, if she chooses to, she can actually still call for evidence and get it all out in front of the public as quick as possible. And this is what this guy, who is Norman Eisen, CNN legal analyst, served as counsel to the House Judiciary Committee for the first impeachment and trial of then Donald Trump. And he's a lawyer. He formerly worked at the criminal division of the Southern District of New York. So he's got some experience in law. And he's basically saying, hey, okay, now that the court has kicked this down and in their words, in Trump's favor, he's calling on District Court Judge Tanya Chutkin to initiate the next best thing, an evidentiary hearing, a kind of mini trial that will thoroughly ventilate the facts in the case. And he's telling her to do this quickly. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I thought that was an interesting position to go for here. Let's also look at this one. The Atlantic says the Supreme Court puts Trump above the law. Now we're kind of getting to the opinions where, like I said, there's some people who are clearly saying like that's what's at stake here. We are going to read some of this, and I will include all of these articles in my show notes at theconsciousresistance.com after we finish this live, but I'm not going to read the entire article. I just want to hit some of the headlines here. Of course, Biden issues a warning about the power of the presidency and Trump after the Supreme Court ruling. He said, quote, "There are no kings in America, and each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the president of the United States." And he continued, with today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changes. For all practical purposes, there are virtually no limits on what the president can do. It's a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. So that's Biden's warning. And the interesting thing is that Biden also acknowledged that he has that power now. So think about that, people. Like, here he says, I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I've had for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. And Biden said the American people must decide if they want to entrust the presidency to Trump, knowing that he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. So I think that's interesting because for all of you who hate Biden or afraid of that side, think about that. Now he's got 6 more months at least in office. He could use these powers and, I don't know, do whatever the heck he wants. The same thing they're accusing and saying, well, now that this is in office, Trump is going to become a dictator. And let's be real, my friends. I know some of you want to deny these realities, but look, Trump, not Joe Biden, Trump is the one who has definitely said that he's just going to be a dictator on day one. He said that he wants retribution. And then later, of course, he'll qualify his statements and say, oh, my retribution is just going to be succeeding. But it's like we can see the telltale signs of an authoritarian. And it's not just because he said some mean things. Look at his actions. Look at the things he supports. If you don't know about this, you can visit theconsciousresistance.com. In fact, let me just pull that up real quick. And you can go visit our category. We just updated this, by the way. We've got all these fancy new categories for those who haven't seen our website. You can easily navigate 11 years worth of content. And I want you to go to the section called the Trump Deception. And I want you to start there and start digging through my reports and really getting to know who Donald Trump is. Not, again, what he says, not his words, but his actions. Because if you've only been following right-wing media, you probably haven't been seeing a lot of the things that are going on. So my point here, though, is that Donald Trump has already made it clear he plans to still be an authoritarian. He showed that already, and he's going to continue in that process. So just acknowledge that. That doesn't mean you can still vote for him whatever you want, but at least let's just be real. And that means if he comes into office in 2025, he could use these powers to go after his enemies, as he has been promising. And unfortunately, some of you out there, especially those of you who fell for the QAnon sense, would probably support them taking the Democrats and the satanic pedophiles and marching them out to the streets and killing them, or having military tribunals like QAnon talked about for so long, even if it meant that he was violating the Constitution in the process, because you would cheer and say, look, he's going after all the people I hate. He's going after the mainstream media and the Clintons. And then you would be empowering a person to be a dictator. And that's not just Trump. And in fact, maybe Trump does win and he never uses this power. But the point is, it's on the books now. So the next president down the line, or let's say Kamala Harris or somebody else that we have no idea comes into office, they will now have this ability. And as I started by saying, even Joe Biden has that ability now for the next 6 months. So I don't think this is a good thing. But unfortunately, there's a lot of independent alternative media, mainstream alternative media, Trump-biased alternative media that are just giving this guy free passes all over the place. And again, I'm willing to call out the garbage about Russiagate and some of the different ways that they appear to have been targeting Trump. My friends, I believe that is all part of the narrative and all part of a scripted storyline to bring us closer and closer to chaos. I warned about this before the 2020 election. I'm warning about it again. Something more than likely is going to happen around Election Day or as we get to the Inauguration Day again, because unfortunately, the predator class, the powers that wish they were, are using fifth generation warfare and social media and propaganda and even stories that you think serve your purposes to guide us to probably a potential civil war. And I don't say that lightly. I don't even like people who civil war is on the horizon all the time, clickbait videos. But there's a lot of predictive programming. There's even a freaking movie called Civil War that came out this year. That is what this is about. They want to create this fake hero in Donald Trump and make some of you believe Trump's the only one that's fighting the New World Order. He's going to defend, stop us. And Joe Biden's so obviously horrible and barely there. And the left has become insane that you're still stuck in that false dichotomy. So you think, oh, this guy must be the answer, even though he clearly shows that he is an authoritarian. He has a dangerous streak within him. He's self-absorbed. He's a narcissist. That doesn't mean that he's what they say, and that doesn't mean that they're any better. It means that they, as far as I believe, and if you go deeper down this rabbit hole, you start to see behind the scenes, behind the curtain, it's the Wizard of Oz that's running everything. And you're watching a movie, a scripted storyline. On this season in America, will Donald Trump win the presidency after the Supreme Court ruling? Is Joe Biden going to resign? It's all a narrative. It's all being crafted to drive us to the place they want, which is chaos. They want to create this false dichotomy that people who think Donald Trump is literally Hitler, and if he gets in office, the world's over, which I think that is a possibility. And the other side that's like, if Joe Biden wins, it's going to be full-on communism. Neither side is willing to lose electorally. They are setting us up for failure. They're setting us up for conflict. All right, I got way off balance. Let's get back to it now. Thank you guys for watching. This is the Conscious Resistance Live. So let's go back to this one. Supreme Court puts Trump above the law. So you can get like a real perspective from someone from the left who is saying this. Near the top of their sweeping lawless opinion, Donald Trump's defenders on the Supreme Court, like you hear that, you see how this one's already biased that way. Like, I just want you to hear it. They repeat one of the most basic principles of American constitutional government. The president is not above the law. And then they proceed to obliterate it. Although the pro-Trump justices attempt to nest the breadth of their opinion in legalese, they're finding that the president cannot be prosecuted for, quote, official acts, and that much of the efforts to Trump's efforts to seize power fall under that rubric, means that the justices have essentially legalized a losing president refusing to step down, as Trump tried to do after 2020. The court's opinions present an absurd paradox that defeats the purpose of a constitutional democracy governed by the rule of law. It has little basis in the Constitution or in the words of the founders. It is the outcome that most benefits the court's preferred presidential candidate, while allowing the justices to live with themselves for defacing beyond recognition the Constitution and the concept of democratic self-determination. In her dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor puts it plainly. Regarding the question of, quote, whether a former president enjoys immunity from criminal prosecution, she writes, quote, the majority thinks he should, and so it invents an atextual, ahistorical, and unjustifiable immunity that puts the president above the law. That is the long and the short of it. Referring to Trump's scheme to go after alleged voter fraud, the court writes, because the president cannot be prosecuted for conduct within his executive constitutional authority, Trump is absolutely immune from prosecution of the alleged conduct involving discussions with the Justice Department. This is the alleged discussions they're talking about is how, according to the Justice Department, Trump was warned by his own advisors that voter fraud was bogus. They have a link there. That's not me saying it. Go look at yourself, challenge yourself. But Trump told the Justice Department, quote, just say that the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the R congressman, which is Republican congressman. And that's according to notes by a Justice Department official. Could that have been faked? Sure. But it sure does seem like Trump was trying to use what he could to stay in office. And would he do that again now that this Supreme Court ruling has come through? That could be likely. And so let's get to some of the dissent again, because you guys already know that they fell on Trump's side. But let's go to what the dissenting opinion said here. Okay, so here we go. This is their main point here. By now, it should be obvious that this is a fiction. The current composition of the court is the result of decades of work by right-wing activists seeking a permanent conservative political ascendancy, and the behavior of the majority consistently reflects this objective. Like other right-wing institutions, it has become thoroughly corrupted by obedience to the Republican Party leader, the principle to which all others are now subordinate. This is not the Republican Party court, it's the Trump court. Like I said, guys, there's their bias, but I don't think they're wrong. But the thing they leave out is left-wing institutions are also trying to, use the Supreme Court to put their people in place. That's why I think it's just set up to fail. Trump's claim was absurd on its face, namely that former presidents are immune to prosecution for any crime committed under color of law unless impeached and convicted. The kernel of logic in that argument, that the power of the president confers some level of immunity for certain acts, has now been expanded beyond recognition to immunize Trump from prosecution. Let me pause there real quick and just read that again. The kernel of logic in this argument, the argument being that Trump as president or any president is immune from any kind of crime, because basically they say they wouldn't be able to do their job if they could be subject to lawsuits and things like this. So we have to have some immunity for presidents. And the article says the kernel of logic is that the power of president confers some level of immunity for certain acts, and now that's been expanded beyond recognition. Now, here's my main point with this thing. Guys, has anybody ever heard of the United States presidents of any of the past administrations in the last 50 years being tried for a single crime? No, I don't mean just, they slept with a woman or they did this. I'm talking about the actual crimes, like dropping bombs on other planets, war crime on other planets, other people, other countries, war crimes, spying on their own people, breaking the law regularly. Obama expanding the National Defense Authorization Act in 2012, allowing indefinite detention of American citizens, torture of Americans. Has any president ever been held responsible for those things? Obviously not. So to me, the whole thing is kind of bullshit. Let's just cut to the chase here. Yes, I do think this ruling is favoring Trump in some really bad ways, and I don't think it's good, but it's not just Trump. It can be used by any future president, as I said. But at the same time, presidents already get away with whatever the hell they want. They've never been actually charged for real crimes of going out and harming the American people, destroying the economy, the central banks, etc. Nothing that I think many of us would like to see them held accountable for. If anything, it's this kind of tabloid stuff, going after Trump for, having an affair, going after Bill Clinton for having an affair, things like that, right? But what about the bombs that they dropped on different countries? What about the executive orders that they pushed and the presidential signing statements that they pushed that allowed for people to have their privacy violated, to allow for people on the other side of the world to be bombed and their lives destroyed, that locks people up for nonviolent victimless crimes, right? You guys know the answer. They won't be. That's why Henry Kissinger went to the grave without ever being charged. And he wasn't even a president. He was just a diplomat, but he was allowed to go free. That's why Daddy Bush went to the afterlife without ever facing anything. That's why Baby Bush is probably going to do the same thing. And this is also why I confront these politicians, because they should not go to the grave without knowing for a fact that the things that they have done are horrible and that they should be held accountable. So that's kind of my big problem with this whole thing, that the left mainly is hyping up like, oh my God, this is, it's a new precedent. It's so horrible. Yes. And at the same time, when has any other president actually been held accountable for anything? But what makes it worse is essentially they're just codifying into law now with the Supreme Court ruling, which is the law of the land, that presidents have immunity. And I'm not going to speak absolutely, because as you heard me say a little bit ago, it's going to go back to the lower courts. So that judge, she has the opportunity now to make a ruling after she hears more evidence and the Justice Department makes their arguments, and decide these are official acts, and according to the Supreme Court, Donald Trump can't be held accountable for those, and these are unofficial acts, and he couldn't be held accountable for that. More than likely, that means he's going to get off from any real serious charges for anything and maybe some petty crime. But the point I was making earlier as well is that I do think Trump is guilty of a lot of different things. Some of the things I just mentioned. He dropped more bombs than Obama during his administration. Obviously, he locked people down. He helped destroy the economy, created the biggest deficit in history under a presidency. There's a lot of different things we can get into. And he won't be held accountable for those things. But again, back to that false dichotomy, so many of you now, because you've seen the left and the corporate media go after Trump for a lot of dumb stuff, you now turn a blind eye and a deaf ear and say, oh, well, here they go again, talking crap about Trump. I'm not even going to bother paying attention. I'm not even going to look at the information. That is a huge mistake, my friends. Don't start falling for the false narrative that Trump is now a hero because the people that we know are, not legit are criticizing him. The enemy of your enemy is not necessarily your friend. And people talking shit about somebody you like doesn't necessarily mean that person is a good guy. It feels like so many people have fallen for some super basic, childish lack of logic that is just astounding. Let's continue. A couple more articles here on this topic before we move on to our next topic, which is going to be focused on a report about widespread child abuse within police departments in the United States. So this just gets further. This is Fox News kind of making fun of the liberal justices. Justices claim immunity, and that ruling allows president to poison staff, have Navy SEALs killed by political rivals. So it's coming from the quote from the dissent. And so let me read this because we didn't read it in the other one. The president of the United States, this is again from the liberal Supreme Court justices, the dissenting opinion. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reason, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution, Sotomayor wrote. Orders that the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Take a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune, 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 immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That's the majority's message today. So she's basically saying the majority Supreme Court justices are letting Trump, do whatever he wants because that's going to benefit them in some way or another. And she called the decision, said that the majority decision has, quote, shifted irrevocably the relationship between the president and the American people, being that, quote, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. So, and maybe some could say that's hyperbolic and, okay, she's looking at the worst case scenario, some extreme examples, but is she wrong? Is she wrong? Let's ask that opinion. Is she wrong? According to this ruling, if a president was in his official capacity doing official acts, and one of those involved signing a warrant for the indefinite detention of American citizen, which is allowed by the 2012 NDAA, or let's take it a step further. And you know how Obama actually drone assassinated an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki? He was an American citizen and he was in the Middle East, and Obama drone bombed him. Oh yeah, and then later they bombed his daughter. Oh, and then Trump finished off the rest of the family whenever he was in office and bombed them as well. All of those are official acts, right? So, but let's take it a step further. What if they decide that there is an American citizen? Maybe it's one of those January 6ers we keep hearing about, those dangerous people, and they decide the best route to go is to drone bomb them. And I know that sounds so crazy, but are we really that far off? Guess what? That would be under an official act of a president, and there's no way he could be charged for that, whether that's Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Obama, Clinton, whoever the heck they think of next. None of them could be charged for these things. This is not a good thing for liberty. This is a good thing for Donald Trump. It's not a good thing for liberty. I hope more and more people are seeing that. It's not I'm not a progressive pink-haired liberal screaming this. I'm saying that this is what it seems. It does not look good. And then the final one we'll talk about here, this is the Rutherford Institute. If you're not familiar with the Rutherford Institute, they do great work. Highly recommend them. They've been around for a number of years, and it's really the brainchild of John Whitehead, who's that gentleman there on the screen you might be able to see. And he writes, I think, really interesting articles, does a great job. And this one is his latest one. It's called The Supreme Court Makes the President a Dictator for Life. Also, we're not going to read the whole thing, but there are a few really great points and the ways that he outlines this, some of which I've already covered, but I think we need to outline them here. So right here he says, it doesn't even matter whether other presidents have chosen not to take advantage of any particular power, because it is a president's action in using power rather than forsaking its use that has presidential significance. So it doesn't matter if, okay, well, the law's on the books, but I'm not going to use it. Yeah, we get that. That doesn't matter. It's the abuse of the power is what sets the precedent. In other words, each successive president continues to add to his office's list of extraordinary orders and directives, expanding the reach and power of the presidency and granting him or herself near dictatorial powers. All of the imperial powers amassed by past presidents, including to kill American citizens without due process, to detain suspects indefinitely, to strip Americans of their citizenship rights, to carry out mass surveillance on Americans without probable cause, to suspend laws during wartime, to disregard laws with which he might disagree, to conduct secret wars and convene secret courts, to sanction torture, to sidestep the legislature and courts with executive orders and signing statements, to direct the military to operate beyond the reach of law, to operate a shadow government, and to act as a dictator and a tyrant above the law and beyond any real accountability. All of those, which I just mentioned, which he wrote about, are in fact real. And those were all passed from Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump and to Biden. And they will again go on to the next president. That's how this game works, my friends. If you think it's about one party over the other, you're not going deep enough. These presidential powers acquired through the use of executive orders, decrees, memorandums, proclamations, national security directives, and legislative signing statements, which can be activated by any sitting president, they enable past, present, and future presidents to operate above the law and beyond the reach of the Constitution. They are the powers that continue to be passed along to each successive heir to the Oval Office. The Constitution be damned. So, I mean, I think that makes it pretty clear right there. Now, let's go on a little further here. He says, as for Trump, his concept of power and immunity in presidency has always been troubling, self-serving, and corrupt. In 2016, Trump bragged, I could stand in the middle of the Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? In 2019, he said, I have the right to do whatever I want as president. In 2023, he said if he were reelected, he would be dictator for only day one. And it goes on from there. I mean, I don't think it's that hard to see why this is not a good thing. There's one other thing I'll mention here. Okay, he says, given the fact that America is a relatively young nation, it hasn't taken very long for an authoritarian regime to creep into power. Unfortunately, the bipartisan coup that laid siege to our nation did not happen overnight. It snuck in under our radar, hiding behind the guise of national security, the war on drugs, the war on terror, the war on immigration, political correctness, hate crimes, and a host of other official sounding programs aimed at expanding the government's power at the expense of individual freedoms. The building blocks for the bleak future we are just now getting a foretaste of, police shootings of unarmed citizens, profit-driven prisons, weapons of compliance, a wall-to-wall surveillance state, pre-crime programs, a suspect society, the school-to-prison pipeline, militarized police, overcriminalization, SWAT team raids, endless wars. All of these were put in place by government officials that we trusted to look out for our best interests. So, yeah, that's John Whitehead at the Rushford Institute. Again, it's titled, The Supreme Court Makes the President a Dictator for Life. You might not like that, but I don't hear any strong arguments to the counter showing how this is a good thing, how this is going to be good for us in any way. Like, if you've got the argument, then let me know. Is there a good argument for this? Is there anything that we can do to see some positive silver lining in this? I don't know. So to the title of tonight's show, is this a pointless freakout or is this the end of liberty? It's not pointless to be upset about this. It's not the end of liberty as it stands, because guess what, my friends? We're still alive. We're still breathing. That means there's always a chance. That means there's always hope. But is it a step in the wrong direction? Abso-freaking-lutely, 100%, without a doubt. This is not a good move. This is not good for liberty. This is not good for any of us. I don't think that we should be celebrating this. The only people who I guess are celebrating or should be celebrating are people who think Donald Trump's going to come in and do good things with this newfound power. I don't see that as a good. I don't see that as a good outcome. And no, in case anybody's out there thinking it, that doesn't mean I support Joe Biden. You should probably know I'm a non-voter. For those of you who've been around long enough, you know that I'm not going to vote. And for those of you who've been on YouTube, the old channel, you missed it. A couple of months ago, I confronted Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I asked him about Zionism. And that's the point. All three of these guys, at the end of the day, current presidential candidates, they're all Zionists anyways, right? But the Supreme Court ruling is now establishing in the Supreme Court, the law of the land of the entire United States, that a president has immunity for official acts and cannot be prosecuted. And we will wait to see how the courts decide what is official and what is unofficial. But either way, it doesn't look good. I don't think this is a win for liberty. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, come back with our second story, and then we'll continue on. We still got news about this big investigation about widespread police abuse of children. We're going to talk about this book, Proofs of a Conspiracy, and we're going to play a conscious music video to wrap things up in just a little bit. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Derrick Broze. It's good to be back on YouTube and connecting with you guys, but don't expect that I'll be here forever. The channel might be deleted by tomorrow. Follow me at theconsciousresistance.com. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins. No advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
All right. Welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. That was AbovePhone.com. For those of you who haven't been around, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com. Above Phone is one of my partners. It's my buddy Hakeem, who's an old friend, and he's got a privacy-based company. If those of you who are tired of using big tech for your phones, for your laptops, they've got the solution. You want to check it out. You can go to theconsciousresistance.com, check out our little ad we have on the side, and you can get a discount. I think we're offering like a discount off, like percentage and a certain amount off. I can't remember exactly, but go through there, check it out. I encourage you to check out the Above Phone, AbovePhone.com. All right, guys. Before we get into our next story, I actually want to play a clip. A couple of months ago, I was on Redacted, and I talked about something called the Summit of the Future. Again, for those of you who haven't been following my work regularly, the Summit of the Future is something I wrote an article about a couple of months ago. You can find it at theconsciousresistance.com. This September in New York City, as the UN is meeting for their General Assembly meeting, they're also going to be meeting for what they're calling the Summit of the Future, where they're claiming they're going to sign the Pact for the Future. They're trying to get all 192 nations of member states of the UN to come together and sign this new document. They're talking about revamping the UN altogether. They're calling it UN 2.0. My friends, I believe this is going to be a major, major step towards global government, just like we saw with the attempt with the World Health Organization Treaty. I'm probably going to end up getting kicked off YouTube. All right. I believe this is going to be a major step towards that, and I'm trying to raise and shout from the rooftops about this. So I went on Redacted to talk about my article, and I'm just going to play you guys a quick clip from this. I was also just on Redacted the other day talking about a piece of the Pyramid of Power, talking about false flags and my section on the Oklahoma City bombing. So check that out. And I'm just setting off probably all the censors on YouTube. But let's go ahead and check out this clip. This is from my recent interview, maybe a month or two ago, on Redacted, talking about the Summit of the Future and why it's important that we start paying attention, but more importantly, also pushing back and focusing on solutions. Check this out.
Well, globalists are about to meet this fall to plan a technocratic takeover. That's what our next guest calls the upcoming United Nations meeting called Summit of the Future, where nations will sign this so-called Pact for the Future, and they are expected to declare a planetary emergency. Okay, all of those things sound a little bit worrying. Let's keep an eye on this. Derrick Broze is an independent journalist who writes for The Conscious Resistance. He brought this to our attention, so we invited him on to tell us all about it. Why do you think it's so brazenly happening in public?
The reality is that there is more resistance than there probably ever has been. I mean, obviously, channels like yours are reaching millions of people. There's more and more people who are looking for this information. COVID-1984 woke up a lot of people and has caused many people to start questioning the so-called experts and the institutions that maybe, people went most of their lives generally trusting, okay, yeah, the FDA, CDC, they're probably doing their job. But then as people got a closer look at how these institutions operate, and then, of course, the people behind them, the globalist organizations, the more internationalist organizations, I think people are really seeing where this is going. Now, of course, this is still being deemed conspiracy theory by the mainstream, but we can also see in the mainstream the efforts to debunk and pre-bunk so-called conspiracy theories and misinformation. So they're ramping up their censorship. They're accelerating their plans. And this is because we're sitting here talking, it's April 2024. It's called Agenda 2030, and that's for a reason. They have a vision of completing this transformation of the world in the next 6 to 7 years. And the United Nations themselves, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other organizations, called the decade we're in right now, at the beginning of 2020, they called it the decade of transformation. So we are right here in the middle of this attempted transformation. And this is either going to be humanity stands up, we push back, whether that's protesting, spreading awareness, sharing videos like this and articles. I also think we need to put our energy into creating our own systems. You know, they want to have a summit of the future. We need to have a people's summit of the future and think about what does our pact to the future look like? What are we actually trying to create? Because if we know we reject their systems and we don't think there's, you know, that's going to lead to privacy and liberty and freedom and all those things that we desire, then we need to also put energy as individuals, as families, as collectives, as species. What is the world that we want for 2030 and beyond? Because if we don't take active steps to create that, we are going to be swept up into these people's vision. And it is not a vision of freedom. It is not a vision of happiness. It is you will own nothing and be happy. And so I think if we know that that's not what we want, we need to keep spreading awareness as much as possible. We need to connect with other people who are interested in these ideas and who are looking for solutions. And that's why I'm here to share this with you and your audience.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that empowering way to wrap this up, because sometimes we're just like, wow, they're doing this crazy stuff. We're watching, we can do nothing. So I appreciate this take that we can do something.
So that is my clip, as I said, from Redacted. That was back in April. I'm warning people talking about the Summit of the Future. Go to theconsciousresistance.com and learn more. And as I said there, it's time for us to focus on what we're going to do. How are we going to organize? And as part of that, let me go ahead and pull this up. I'm calling for, or we are organizing, I'm part of the organizational structure, you could say, of the People's Reset, formerly known as the Greater Reset. Like I said earlier in the video, we launched the Greater Reset in the middle of COVID, 2020 going into 2021. We've held 5 successful events. We've now rebranded. We're calling it the People's Reset because we want to move away on focusing on what they're doing. But at the same time, this year, our event, we're expanding to the UK. We're coming to Bath, UK, September 27th to the 29th. This is going to be completely streamed for free online. Anybody will be able to watch, but I encourage you to come in person. And we're calling it, as you can see here, our Summit for Our Future. We're literally going to be meeting a week after they are meeting in New York City for the Summit for the Future. And we're going to be gathering for 3 days, focused on 5 different themes: liberating your mind, body, and soul, permaculture and food independence, parallel networks, empowering technology, building free and conscious communities. Our principles are decentralization, interdependence, freedom of choice, bodily autonomy, individual liberty. There's going to be concerts. There's going to be 24 plus speakers, 27 workshops. There's going to be evening events, networking. If you can make it, if you know anybody in the UK or Europe, encourage them to check it out at thepeoplesreset.org, thegreaterreset.org as well. And we are so excited about this. And we will be back in Mexico in January, continuing this movement as well. But even if you can't make it in person, which I highly encourage you to, because if you come down here and watch this little trailer we got on the front page, you'll see how life-changing this event is. This is our official after movie of our event in January. Highly, 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 highly encourage you to check it out and to come out if you can. Come get involved, because we're building a movement, and it's a solutions-focused movement. We're not focused on the problems so much as focusing on what we're going to do about it. And I encourage you to check it out, thepeoplesreset.org. All right, let's move to our next story of the evening. This one is coming from the Washington Post, surprisingly. This is some mainstream news, actually, and that's interesting. I haven't seen many people talking about it, but it was written by a mainstream outlet, the Washington Post. It's called Abused by the Badge. And as you can see here at the top, it says, he was a police officer. She was 15 years old. He met her when she called for help. Then he sexually abused her. A Washington Post investigation found hundreds of law enforcement officers in the United States have sexually exploited kids, many avoiding prison time. This was released actually a month ago almost. And I'm surprised. I just found out about it about a week or two ago, and I've been meaning to talk about it. This is sort of an addendum to their abused by the badge investigation, a little bit of a look behind. It's called How the Post Investigated Police Officers Accused of Sexually Abusing Kids. So we're going to get into some of the facts of this. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm working on the Pyramid of Power. You can watch all the released episodes at thepyramidofpower.net. The next episode that's going to be coming out in late summer in August is called The Pedo Class, Chapter 15, and you can guess what it's about. And it's going to be diving deeper. I'm going to be updating my work on the finders, my work on the Utah ritual abuse ongoing lawsuit. Don't take me down, YouTube. That's a real lawsuit. It's not a conspiracy. And looking into why abuse of children is so widespread that you can find it in country around the world. You can find it in religions around the world. You can find it in law enforcement, security officers, teachers, the Boy Scouts, parents, etc., and why that is and why our society seems to have a problem with that. So I'll be diving deeper into this. And that's what led me to this. Let's dive into it a little bit. They served in police departments big and small. They were new recruits and seasoned veterans, patrol officers and chiefs of police. They understood the power of their guns and their badges, and in many cases, they used that very power to find and silence their victims. A Washington Post investigation has found that over 2 decades, hundreds of law enforcement officers in the United States have sexually abused children, while officials at every level of the criminal justice system have failed to protect kids, to punish the abusers, and to prevent additional crimes. Now, I will warn you, for those of you who are sensitive to these topics, this does get pretty graphic and pretty fucked up. Police and sheriff's department have enabled predators by botching background checks, ignoring red flags, and mishandling investigations. Accused cops have used their knowledge of the legal system to stall cases, get charges lowered, or evade convictions altogether. Prosecutors have given generous plea deals to officers who admit to raping and groping minors. Judges have also allowed many convicted officers to avoid prison time. All the while, children in every state and in D.C. have continued to be targeted, groomed, and violated by officers sworn to keep them safe. Cases like this are not unique. The Post identified at least 1,800 state and local law enforcement officers who were charged with crimes involving sexual abuse from 2005 to 2022. So this isn't even decades ago, guys. This is most recent data 2 years ago. Reporters spent more than a year unearthing thousands of court filings, police records, and other documents to understand who these officers are, how they gain access to children, and what is and isn't being done to stop them. The Post conducted an exclusive analysis of the nation's most comprehensive database of police arrests. This database, which is managed by Bowling Green State University, tracks news of police reports, news reports of arrests of law enforcement. Of the hundreds of thousands of sworn officers in the U.S., only a small fraction are ever charged with crimes, and not all reports are reported in the news media. But from 2005 through 2022, Bowling Green identified about 17,700 state and local officers who were charged with crimes, including physical assault, drunk driving, and drug offenses. The Post found that 1 in 10 of those officers were charged with a crime involving child sexual abuse. 1 in 10 of the 17,700 officers who were charged over this 15-year period. This type of police conduct has largely gone unrecognized by the public and unaddressed within the criminal justice system. When pressed by the Post, some police officials, prosecutors, and judges admit that they could have done more to hold officers accountable in the cases they handled. But nationwide, there's been little reckoning over child abusers within the ranks. Yeah, and it gets worse as I go on here. I don't, like I said, I want you guys to look into this. I don't need to read the whole thing, but I will give credit where credit is due. Look, this is good work by the corporate mainstream media, Jeff Bezos, Washington Post. I think that's fair to say they did great work here. Abused by the badge is a series. You can find hundreds of officers abused children. Many exploited their authority to coerce victims. Another article titled, "An Officer Sexually Abused a Teen in His Police Car. How Will He Be Punished?" Another one, let's go a little bit wider. I'm using an archived version of this article, so it probably won't open up everything, but you'll find the links. It says New Orleans police child abuse. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much of this. So let's go to this other one. How did they do this? Let's look into some of their practices here. It says that Jessica Contreras was reporting on child sex trafficking in 2021 when she started to notice the headlines. They appeared in her inbox a few times a month, the product of Google alerts that she set to be notified of stories regarding kids abuse in the criminal justice system. She was accustomed to seeing stories in which law enforcement officers were mentioned because they were investigating child sexual abuse. But in these cases, the officers were the abusers themselves. Headlines like, "Former Louisville police officer sentenced for sexually assaulting a child. Ex-Chicago cop sentenced to 25 years in sex trafficking of young girls. Sex abuse victim of former LVMPD officer. I was turned into a human pet." These headlines frequently called the officers former, but they were former officers only because they'd resigned or been fired after being accused. Many of them had used their jobs to find their victims, who were almost always described as young, vulnerable teenage girls. And it just goes into how this journalist, she started working with another team of reporters, an investigative reporter and a data reporter. And they spent more than a year examining the police officers accused of this, and they discovered that on average, a law enforcement officer has been charged with a crime involving child sexual abuse twice a week, every week for over 18 years. So that's on average. They're based on all the reports they're looking at. Sex abuse charges to cops twice a week, every week for 18 years. But knowing that police officers are sexually abusing kids was just the first step. We wanted to understand how these crimes happen, how the officers are investigated, and what consequences they face, and what's being done to stop predators with badges and what isn't. So this is where they start talking about how they're going to be releasing a lot of different documents, where they got the databases. This is really, I think, actually, if anybody out there has interest in being an independent journalist, this is all related to, as they said, data journalism, where you go look at large data sets and then you start to see what stories there are. So in this case, they're looking at large data sets related to stories with police in the headlines. You start to narrow it down and see, okay, these relate to police actually doing abusing. Okay, these relate to police who got off without charges. And you start to, map out that data, and then you've got stories. And it says Bowling Green organizes their sex-related crimes into categories that include forcible and statutory rape, forcible sodomy, forcible fondling, sexual assault with an object, incest, online solicitation. Again, I'm probably going to get deleted off YouTube for talking about this, even though it's in the mainstream. So yeah, I encourage you guys to read this series. Everything that I've covered today, including these two stories, will be in the show notes at theconsciousresistance.com. Once I wrap up, I'll get that posted. I encourage you to read this Abused by the Badge series. It's worth your time. It's not an easy read. It's disgusting. It's sick. But we don't get rid of and don't end these crazy messed up things like this by ignoring them and pretending they're not happening. That's not how we improve our situation. We have to accept that we're dealing with some pretty horrific circumstances. And in order to fix them, we have to address them. This is why I'm working on the Pyramid of Power, chapter 15, the pedo class, and trying to get people to understand that there does appear to be all over the world, not just in the United States, a problem with child abuse, with pedophilia, and with the sort of thing that we just heard from the Washington Post, that people are getting away with it and they're being protected. Even they're not just getting away with it, but the system that is supposed to protect the children and protect us is protecting the predators. So this can happen in any industry, any profession. I think it actually comes back to the false belief in authority, and parents saying, well, this is a cop, so I can trust my kids with him. Or this is a pastor, I can trust my kids with him. Or this is the local youth group minister, or the teacher, or the neighbor next door. I'm not saying you need to be paranoid, but definitely don't fall into that false authority of thinking because this person is an X, Y, and Z, they're automatically immune to doing anything wrong. And so I can just put my kid there and not even give a second thought to it. I do not recommend that at all. And unfortunately, these things, we could pull up dozens and dozens of more stories like this right now. I've talked about this in relation to my Utah case. In fact, let's go ahead and pull that up. For those who haven't been to the site in a while, our really redesigned website makes it very easy to find all of the content, everything that I've been reporting on, including stories like this. You can find my stories relating to the finders. You can find my stories relating to the Utah ritual abuse scandal. You just scroll down here, and you'll see all the categories, and you'll see the Finders Cult, you'll see the Utah ritual abuse, you'll see the Epstein network, and you can find the reporting I've done on this over the years. This is a prevalent problem. This is something that does get ignored by many people. I know those of you who are in the know and our kind of truth freedom communities were more aware of this stuff, but it seems like the public only accepts, okay, yeah, Epstein broke through the veil of secrecy and made the mainstream, but still, as you guys have seen, we're not talking about whoever his co-conspirators were. Most people think, oh yeah, that was just some sick, rich billionaire guy. That's not anything that is actually, a habitual thing that exists in society. That is just one lone guy and his sick, twisted mind. But we know that, the rest of the world is all good people, and anybody who's saying that there's, groups of people who might be involved in that, especially in a ritualistic way, well, we all know those are conspiracy theorists. Only stupid people believe that, not us intelligent people. I wish it was that way, my friends. I wish it was that way. Unfortunately, I've had to read some of these describing these disgusting documents over the years describing these things in order to be able to report about this to you guys. So, all right, we're done with the news. Now we're going to get to our final two segments of the evening. First off, though, well, no, let's just go ahead. We're going to get into it. This is called What's Derrick Reading? And soon I'll have like a nice segment change here, some graphics, a video, but not yet. So like I said, this What's Derrick Reading is just another way I wanted to spice up the show. I've got a lot of books. I read a lot. I need to read more, but I've got a lot of awesome books that I pick up, especially I've been putting money into buying old books that are going out of print or harder to find. And this one is called Proofs of a Conspiracy. Let me pull that back. Proofs of a Conspiracy. Look it up if you haven't heard of it. Proofs of a Conspiracy. It's written by John Robeson, and I'll just read the back to you. The back says Order of Illuminati. Now, this is actually, this is John Robeson writing, so this is kind of like a sample of what the book's about. He says, the association of which I have been speaking is the Order of the Illuminati. Founded in 1775 by Dr. Adam Weishaupt, professor of canon law in the University of Ingolstadt, and abolished in 1786 by the Elector of Bavaria, but revived immediately after under another name in a different form all over Germany. It was again detected and seemingly broken up, but it had by this time taken so deep root that it still subsists without being detected, and it has spread into all the countries of Europe. It took its first rise among the Freemasons, but is totally different from Freemasonry. It was not, however, the mere protection gained by the secrecy of the lodges that gave occasion to it, but it arose naturally from the corruptions that had gradually crept into the fraternity, the violence of the party spirit which pervaded it, and from the total uncertainty and darkness that hangs over the whole of that mysterious association. It is therefore necessary to give some account of the innovations that had been introduced into Freemasonry from that time that it made its appearance on the continent of Europe as a mystical society possessing secrets different from those of the mechanical employment whose name it was assumed, and thus affording entertainment and occupation to persons of all ranks of profession, blah, blah, blah. So this is just, they're giving a sample of what this guy was writing about. As I said earlier, though, John Robeson, he was a priest back in the 1700s. He wrote this book. The full title is Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in the secret meetings of Freemasons and Illuminati and the reading societies collected from good authorities, by John Robeson, professor of natural philosophy and secretary to the Royal Society of Edinburgh. He sent this book to George Washington. In fact, let me see if I've got any of my notes here. Yeah, I think I can pull this up, and I'll let you guys take a look at this real quick. This is actually, we can read the letter. John Robeson sent George Washington this book and was basically warning him, saying, Mr. Washington, I've been writing about how the Illuminati, in his words, have infiltrated the Freemason lodges in Europe, and I believe they're trying to do something similar in your country. Please, pay attention. We don't really know if George Washington actually read the book, but he did respond to him and talk about it. We'll see if this opens up. The link's going slow, but this is going to be something that I'm going to cover in chapter 16 of the Pyramid of Power, which is called Religion and Secret Societies, and that's the final episode of, as we get to the top of the pyramid. The final episode is chapter 17, answering, well, who the heck is on top of that pyramid? But here we go. I want to read you some of this letter. This is from George. This is to George Washington from George W. Snyder, August. Let's see what year this was. August 1798. Okay, so this is not Derrick Broze. This is a book that was written back in the 1700s, sent to the first president of the United States by a priest, by the author, and other people. And I think this relates to it. Hopefully I didn't pull up a random ass letter. Okay, yeah, here we go. From G.W. Snyder. Sir, this is August 22nd, 1798. Sir, you will, I hope, not think of it as a presumption in a stranger. They write really weird with their old language, so bear with me, whose name perhaps never reached your ears, to address himself to you, the commanding general of a great nation. I am a German born and literally educated in the city of Heidelberg in the Palatinate of the Rhine. I came to this country in 1776 and felt soon after my arrival a close attachment to the liberty for which these confederated states then struggled. The same attachment still remains, not glowing but burning in my breast. At the same time that I am exulting in the measures adopted by our government, I feel myself elevated in the idea of my adopted country. Okay, let's get to the point here. Okay, here he goes. And I do heartily despise all the evils of infidelity. Our present time, pregnant with the most shocking evils and calamity, threatens to ruin our liberty and our government. The most secret plans are in agitation. plans calculated to ensnare the unwary, to attract the gay and irreligious, and to entice even the well-disposed to combine in the general machine for overturning all government and all religion. It was some time since the book that fell into my hands, entitled Proof of a Conspiracy by John Robeson, which gives a full account of Society of Freemasons that distinguishes itself by the name Illuminati, whose plan is to overturn all of the government and religion, even natural, and whose endeavor to eradicate every idea of a supreme being and distinguish man from beast by his shape only. A thought suggested itself to me that some of the lodges in the United States might have caught the infection and might cooperate with the Illuminati or the Jacobin Club in France. Fauché is mentioned by Robeson as a zealous member, and who can doubt of Genet and Adet? He's naming different politicians. Have not these their confidence in this country? They use the same expressions and are generally men of no religion. Upon serious reflection, I was led to think that it might be within your power to prevent the horrid plan from corrupting the brethren of the English lodge over which you preside. I send you the proofs of a conspiracy, which no doubt will give you satisfaction and afford you a matter for a train of ideas that may operate to our national felicity. If, however, you have already perused the book, it will not, I trust, be disagreeable to you that I have presumed to address you with this letter in the book accompanying it. May the supreme ruler of all things continue you long with us in these perilous times. May he endow you with strength and wisdom, on and on and on. So yeah, this is one letter. There's more where we know that George Washington was actually sent the book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. And I've got a lot more notes. We could go on and on. But yeah, this is just another one for those of you who maybe have never heard of this, Proofs of a Conspiracy, John Robeson. Check it out. Find it out there. You will be hearing more about this in Chapter 16 of the Pyramid of Power. I'm not claiming everything in here is 100% fact. I've considered the other evidence. There's people who said that this guy was a quack at the time, and they said that he falsely accused some people, or some people were Masons, but because apparently he's got a list of a lot of people in here. Obviously, this is 300 years ago. We can't really confirm or verify all these names, but nevertheless, this shows. And of course, if you know your history, you know that there was an anti-Mason movement in the United States and elsewhere. A lot of people don't know that. So there have been people resisting the infiltration of governments and stuff by secret societies and not so secret societies for hundreds of years. Now, of course, in the modern mainstream, they tell us that, well, those were just the crazy old people. They didn't really know what was what. And anybody who still believes that the Masons are up to something, or these other groups are up to something, well, you're just a quack. You're just a conspiracy theorist. I don't know, guys. I plan to dive deeper in the 16th chapter of the Pyramid of Power, and you can check out all the episodes of the Pyramid of Power, which are available already at thepyramidofpower.net. So, all right, I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. I've got maybe one other thing to show you real quick, if you don't mind, and then we'll say goodbye. And we're going to end with a music video, as we always do. This week, I'm going to play you guys, for those who weren't here last week, I'm going to play you one of my songs, because again, another thing that those of you who have been following only on YouTube missed is that I started making music in 2020. I don't think I'd released any of it by that point, but I started making music. I'm a conscious hip hop artist called 33, and I know some of you are going to freak out, especially because I was just talking about Freemasons, but no, I'm not a Freemason. It has a whole other meaning to me. That was the year when I was 33, a couple of years, 6 years ago. My birth father died of a drug overdose. Also, some people believe Christ ascended at age 33. Buddha reached enlightenment at age 33. There's a power to that number, and they might know that power, but I don't believe that they control symbols or numbers. They don't have a monopoly on those things. Which they means the hierarchy enslaving you, FYI. They don't have a monopoly on these things. Symbols and numbers are all about intention of the person that uses them. And so for me, 33 is healing, it's transformation, it's growth. Nevertheless, that's what I call my music. Before we go, though, I want to let you guys know about one other sponsor company that I'm working with. They're called Cultivated Mind. Let's go ahead. Oops, let me take that off. Cultivated Mind. This is a company I started working recently. A good friend of mine who's based in Houston, Texas. I like to work with companies and friends who are near where I'm from. And Cultivated Mind is a great company focused on organic mushroom extracts. You can go to cultivatedmind.com, or you can go to theconsciousresistance.com and look for my interview that I did recently with Sean, where we talked deep about this. If you go through my link, you actually get, like, I think it's a 10% discount off or something good. He's got Radiant Energy, which is cordyceps. That's for like pre and post workout. Brain for people who got brain fog, and then Immunity. These are all different types of mushrooms: lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, shiitake, turkey tail. I mean, this is great stuff. And the interview on theconsciousresistance.com, Sean goes deep and talks all about the power of these mushrooms. And I encourage you to check it out. I'm not here trying to show you guys stuff that I don't believe in, but this is another way to support my work as well as to help yourself. So I figured I'd mention it. Cultivatedmind.com. Go to theconsciousresistance.com. You can check out the full interview with Sean Hawkins of that company. All right. Now let's go ahead and end it for today. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. My name is Derrick Broze. We're going to do this every week. I'm back in Mexico, back at my desk. We're going to be live again next Monday. I'm back on YouTube. I'm hesitant to continue streaming on YouTube. I did this tonight. Hopefully the channel's still alive tomorrow. Since they brought back the channel, by the way, every day I've gotten emails of them taking down videos from 2015, 2016, 2014. Like they're going far back. And somebody asked earlier in one of the chats, why did they turn my channel on back now? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. I think what happened, though, might have actually been a mistake because my new YouTube channel, I was banned off of. Imagine that, for 2 weeks. And I put in an appeal, and I think somehow it appealed randomly after 4 years, my old channel, and all of a sudden I wake up and the channel's back in, and yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, I don't know if I will continue to stream there. So if you happen to see this on YouTube, guys, I'm not dead. I've been around for 4 years, continuing, producing documentaries, writing articles for The Last American Vagabond, running the Conscious Resistance, touring across the world, spreading the message of liberty, of the Conscious Resistance, of holistic activism, of exit and build, of focusing on real world solutions, not the political bullshit, not the distractions, not the black pilled, oh my God, there's nothing we can do, life is screwed. No, real practical solutions, launching the Greater Reset movement, the People's Reset, the Freedom Cell Network, trying to elevate myself and be an example for other people, not because I got it all figured out, none of us do, but I know that we are reflections of each other. And if I can do something that inspires you through my hard work, through my time, my dedication, and that encourages you to work harder in the ways that you can to take care of your families. And if more of us start doing that, we start exiting from these slavery systems, getting off the big tech, getting off, and not just, okay, we're on YouTube. I'm talking about not using Microsoft, using Linux, getting on things like the Above phone, the Above book, using private messengers, not giving into their systems, not playing their game financially, pursuing alternative currencies, pursuing local food production, community gardening, permaculture, etc. All of these ideas and so much more can free us from their chains. But Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Obama, Michelle Obama, none of those people can save you. Robert F. Kennedy, none of them can save you. Stop outsourcing your power. Recognize that we need to focus locally. And the most local you can go is right here in your own heart and your own mind. That's how we build a better world. Each of us working on our healing, processing our pain, fixing our trauma, doing that work, thinking holistically, doing the inner work against our own internal tyrant, our doubts, fears, and insecurities, doubts and limiting beliefs that can hold us back, and at the same time working to reject and exit from these slavery systems that they're building, because digital IDs are coming, CBDCs are coming. I've been warning about this since before 2019, but I wrote this in 2019, published it in January 2020, and unfortunately, a lot of it came true, and I updated it. That's the other thing. I released this in 2020, but this is the second edition. I wrote 5 new chapters, post-COVID edition, sharing about everything we learned during COVID-19 '84 and how you can get out of the banking system. I've been doing it. I haven't had a bank account since 2008. I don't have a relationship with the IRS. I don't have a phone. I don't have a driver's license. I'm not saying you need to live that way, but I do so in a conscious way because I want to avoid these systems. And even then, it's still difficult, but it's only going to get harder. The more plugged in you are into those systems, the more debt you have, the more your entire life is dependent on this matrix, the harder it will be to pull out once it's necessary. And if you don't start thinking this way and thinking ahead, my friends, because things have calmed down, right? Since the last time you saw me on YouTube, we're not in the middle of the COVID-19 '84 hysteria, but make no mistake, these psychopaths are working on more plans, the Summit of the Future, the Pact for the Future, and more of these things. You need to recognize we're in a moment. There's a lull, there's a calm before the storm, but the only answer is you, me, us, collectively coming together, uniting, putting our bullshit aside, and focusing on getting out of these systems to build new ones. Not because we're giving up, not because we're running away, but because we recognize that these systems are failed, they're broken, they were never good in the first place, they're not worth saving. We need to have a people's reset, a people's retaking of our own sovereignty and building new systems. It's going to take struggle. It's going to take effort. It's going to take money and time. And it's not as easy as pressing a button every 4 years and thinking that you save the world. But my friends, this is the real way to freedom. This is the real way to liberty. It doesn't involve outsourcing your power and giving it up to politicians who don't give a damn about you. reflect on what we talked about earlier, the Supreme Court ruling. Whoever becomes president now can do extreme things and basically be shielded from any potential prosecution, even if there was very little of chance of prosecution in the first place. That's on the books now. Things aren't looking good for liberty, but I believe it needs to get dark a little bit more before people continue to wake up. Just like we saw that COVID-19 '84 was our biggest gift and it got millions of people to wake up, we need even more of that. And I wish it didn't have to get bad and get worse for people to wake up. But unfortunately, many of us out there, I hate to say it, my brothers and sisters, but you're lazy and you're complacent and you go back to the normal, the new normal, right? We need to shake out from that. We need to shake off our chains and realize that we are the answer. That's the only solution. Us coming together, exiting from their systems, building better ones. Don't fall for the two-party lie, the two-party trap. Guys, my name is Derrick Broze. As always, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Enjoy this song from 33. It's called Free the Warriors. It's for Ross Ulbricht, Julian Assange, who's now free, Daniel Hale, all the warriors, all the heroes, and all the whistleblowers. See you guys next week.
It's time to free the warriors, my friends. We got too many people locked up by the state, and they're counting on us to use our voices.
Look, I don't mean to offend, I love all of humanity. Even those who can't see their own chains, we still family. But what do you call a society that accepts sickness? And what do you call a system that locks someone away with no witness? Like, have you ever heard of a man named Ross Ulbricht? A brilliant young dude locked up for life, but he still exists. They call him a kingpin, a drug lord, be afraid, very afraid. But dig past the propaganda, the lies and the shade. And there's a very different story waiting to be told. A bill of fake goods, to the public it was sold. It's more than 10 years now, with Ross locked up. They thought we lost hope, but the movement's building up.
Yo, we're just getting started. Yo, it's time to free Ross, free Julian Assange, free Daniel Hale, free all the heroes, all the warriors, and all the whistleblowers. Let's do it.
Someone once told me that there's a war on for your mind. You gotta guard your heart and protect your spine. They keep trying to convince us that we are divine. Repeat what we say and don't you dare step out of line. Generations upon generations taught to doubt themselves, never chasing their dreams, left their hope up on the shelf. It's time to come together, what's mine is yours. Can't believe they locking up all our warriors, the ones who use their minds and their voices to inspire. Their creative genius was the spark that lit a fire in the hearts and minds of the free-thinking people. Bit by bit we wake them up, yeah, no more sheeple. Well, despite what they say, Ross is still a hero. We give thanks for his effort and we hope he knows. We're praying for the day that we see you go free. And now you might ask of exactly what is he guilty? Well, he created a space, a place for people to be free, to exchange what they want, a celebration of liberty. No governments, no banks, just free people living in bliss. The state hates competition and we can guarantee this. They water down our history and poison all the food. Men looking at the future got me in some type of mood. They won't stop coming until we finally stand up. And I'm not talking about violence, but I am saying disrupt. Business as usual must not proceed. We need our people to stand strong as we plant the seeds. It's time to come together, what's mine is yours. Can't believe they locking up all our warriors.
Free Ross, free Roger Ver, free Leonard Peltier, free Julian Assange, free Daniel Hale, and free all the future victims of government violence. 33, out.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.